Welcome to Puck Talk CS. I'm Matthew Mugno with my co-host Steve Murno, talking about New York Rangers hockey as we have all season. And Steve-O, nonetheless, you and I have been on this wagon for maybe as long as it could be, literally till the wheels fell off in the Boston Massacre over the weekend. Another terrible loss against the Ottawa Senators at Madison Square Garden last night. I want to start this episode off, Steve-O, by asking you how you qualify this New York Rangers season, maybe compared to 2017-18, the fall off and tear down of the previous regime and the previous group for this club.
Well, there's no way to sugarcoat it. We suck. So let's talk some puck. And I love that question. It's an interesting one. Looking at this year as a whole, you and I didn't want to admit it. The fan in us, you look at the standings and how competitive the Metro is this year, and you say, yeah, there's obviously a chance. But you look at our last 5 games, we're 0-5. We got a 5-game skid. We're 2 games under 500. In a year where the Metro is so competitive, throw in no Igor, you can't win on home ice, and now you can't even score a goal, let alone get a shot. I mean, most of our games we're going 10 minutes in with 1 shot. We're lucky if we get a shot. So obviously, I think this year has been terrible. I would say that I think that this year is worse than 17, 18, that era. I think this year for sure is worse. Just the product that is being put out on the ice. I mean, this year historically on home ice has been bad. I think even in 17, 18, we weren't this bad. It also felt back then, we could easily get, 10, 15 shots. I mean, we're getting, to the point in the season where we can't even get 10 or 15 shots a night. That's how bad we look. I mean, it's bad. For me, though, last year I think was the worst Ranger year of my lifetime. There was that November to January run was just so bad, so uncompetitive. Just the drama that was going on for me, that was the worst as a Ranger fan. But I want to ask you. I'll throw your own question back at you. How do you feel?
I think last season was expectation versus reality, and maybe a reality that no one foresaw. So I agree. I thought that was definitely one of the worst seasons I've watched. You and I have been fans since around that 2011-12 campaign. So forgive us, we're younger folks. But I would, the best way I think I could qualify this year is that there was cautious optimism going into the season, and then everything went wrong. And I think that's where there's a lot of pessimism in New York sports, and especially lately with how poor every team is performing in the big city. But this year, to me, for the Rangers, is I don't know if the pessimists, there's optimists, and I think there's people that are more centered. There might be a lot more of them than we give credit to, but I find that a lot had to go wrong this season for the product to be this bad. So I don't think that's the optimism walking itself down. I think that's looking at the product we're seeing, like you said, and looking and saying like a lot had to go wrong for it to be at this point. And maybe that's a blessing in disguise that it truly is time to move on from a lot of your assets, right?
Yeah, and again, this isn't we're not coming to this realization right now. Both Matt and I knew this, months and months ago. We knew this coming into the season. The fan in us had hope, and we really you watch these games, if you watch the New York Rangers night in, night out, we are defeating ourselves a lot.
Hmm.
Yes, we are plagued with injuries, and Adam Fox and Igor and JT and Trocheck at one point, that was a lot to overcome for this team. But at the same time, we were there in a lot of these games. I mean, how many games did we lose 1-0? I mean, the opportunity, you scratch a goal, you get to overtime, you maybe rack up, 3, 4 more points in the standings. We're right there in a wild card spot. I mean,
Hmm.
we really hurt ourselves this year. The opportunity was there, but all these holes, but the culture, the scoring, the lack of depth, we knew this. This isn't a surprise. I don't want to jump on here in the air and act like, oh, I'm surprised. I'm coming to this grand realization. But I think we're coming to the realization, or how about not the realization? We're finally admitting that it's almost time to pack it in for the year, because I said this all the time here on the show, but I mean, we've played the most games in the league, and we're already coming to that point where, we play a game and we're not going to play 4 or 5 nights later. And, when you're trailing in the standings, you're not going to be able to catch up at that point. And we don't have the depth. We don't have the depth. There's going to be no Fox for a couple more weeks. There's going to be no Igor for God knows when. I mean, this team has such an uphill battle to get to where they need to be. And not even that, we're just so unwatchable. I mean, I'm sure you as a Ranger fan, Matt, and everybody listening, nobody wants to sit there and watch these games. I mean, we're so unwatchable. Matt was at the game against the Sabres last week. I mean, talk about the vibe, the experience there. Like, what was the atmosphere like?
The centennial celebration was awesome for the fan favorites.
It was.
That was really cool. Like Sam doing the announcements, some of the players they brought out. It was cool to see, like, people that are, historic and part of the history, like Nicky Fatiou. They had him like the first t-shirt toss, throwing pucks up to the blue seats. Like, I like when an organization gives credit and gives that nod to a player that's earned that, and has the fandom, has been immersed in the fandom, even though they were a role player. Ty Domi got a big applause. Sean Avery got probably close to the biggest applause behind Henrik Lundqvist. Gravy too, but that was a great experience before the game. They have an awesome exhibit on the first floor, the 100 level, with all like legit, historic artifacts, which was really cool, loaned from the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I could talk about that for hours. I'm a nerd for that stuff. But by the third period, the jump in the Garden when Vincent Trocheck drew the penalty, he got slashed, in the nose, drew blood, 4 minute. That was the loudest pop I've heard in a long time in the Garden. And the fans were on their feet. They were anticipating like 5-on-3. Here we go. Or apologies, 5-on-4 power play for 4 minutes. Like, it's close to the end of the game. Let's tie it up. Let's win this thing. Lafreniere's giveaway and the goal that they scored from a defensive defenseman in Samuelson. I mean, the Sabres came in red hot, but the vibe was like, you felt like it was the last gasp of air. Like, if they can turn it around here, the Winter Classic wasn't too long ago. Let's see where this can go. If they win this game, let's see where they can go. And they had, the game in the bag. They had the best advantage you could have in hockey. I mean, you pull the goaltender, you get another extra skater. They didn't even have an opportunity to do that. The response from the players post game was worse, but in the building, fans started to leave immediately. That goal scored, the shorty. Fans left immediately, and we saw how that's kind of carried over now into the Ottawa game as well. And I don't blame the fans. Steve, something I thought of, which, you and I are math guys, but I'm looking around, I'm going, these tickets were so expensive. I was at the lower 200s. Like, there's not a ticket in Madison Square Garden that's going for under $100. The train ticket from Secaucus for me, for a lot of fans, the entire platform was Ranger fans. You want a popcorn, you want a beer, you're in $33. So at the end of the day, my brother and I probably spent a combined like 600 on that event. Now, it was a gift from him, but you think 300 ahead maybe. And you look around the Garden, Steve, and on TV, it really doesn't do justice that it is this coliseum of fans. The reason I say that is because the fans are the investors. You cannot stink at home. And I think that's what's made the season the worst. Maybe since 17-18 and last season, is the home ice product. And I know you've beat this drum all year, so I want to pass it to you. Like, being in that building and recognizing how much money fans were laying out for this experience, and it's not worth it. So I really don't blame fans for leaving early, or frankly for the rest of the season refuting tickets or just not purchasing them.
Yeah, or going to boo, like we saw last night. Like I'm okay with the booing. I mean, the ice, the quality that's on the ice, it's hard to watch. It really is hard to watch, and we're coming to the point where a lot of Ranger fans are gonna be checking out for the season. You know, no one's gonna be watching every single night, and as they should. Again, it is a very, very hard watch to watch this team this season. Or maybe, well, yeah, I would say this season. But again, even in the beginning of the season, there were still games on the road that we looked like a completely different team, and that's how you know that we flipped the corner here. Because to come out and to start the year, we've played horrible on the road. You know, we at one point this year we were the best road team in the NHL, and that just as the calendar flipped 2026, that just has not been the case. You know, you look at this game in Boston. I mean, it's bad. You know, and I said this on the last episode, you know, and I hate to say that I was wrong, but I mean Jonathan Quick has not, or that I was right, but Jonathan Quick has not been good in some of these games. You know, for the second time in 3 games, he's gotten pulled. And you know, I don't think anybody should be surprised. Yeah, I just think that the workload that he is being asked for is just simply unfair for where he's at his career right now. You know, he's about to be 40 soon. You know, and not all the blame falls on Quick in some of these games, you know, but Quick has not been good. And the defense has not been good either. I mean, that Boston game, I mean, you put me and you on the ice. I mean, I can't even skate, but I'm pretty sure I'm scoring if you put me on the ice in that Boston game. I mean, that's how bad it was. But since stepping into number one role, Quick has not been good. He's looking like Aaron Rodgers out there. I mean, we saw Aaron Rodgers get obliterated by the Texans the other night. I mean, that's what Quick looks like. That's what Quick looks like. But that just goes to show you how much Igor means to this team. And I know we all know that. But what I mean by this is that Igor is putting so much on his plate, and he's doing that consistently every single night. You know, and I think
Mhm.
that's just what he embraces, you know, every single night. And you know, when you throw Quick in there and you try and throw, you know, that the whole bucket at him. I mean, you know, there's not going to be that many goalies in the league where you could expect them to do that every single night. So again, that's what Igor brings to you. He's our whole team right there. And I think our defensive structure, I know I'm throwing a lot at you. I'll let you chip in a second. Our defensive structure to start the year, I think it's been pretty strong. It surprised me to start the season, but our defensive structure lately has not been good. And I would look to, quite frankly, you know, if I'm jury, there's a lot of people on our defense that I would definitely shop at the deadline.
Okay.
So I do a lot
Yeah.
at you, so you can attack whatever you want there.
No, I love everything you said. And with that, you know, you mentioned kind of armchair GM imagination. Before we get there, I do want to give a shout out to Mika Zibanejad. He's obviously taken his lumps from the media. He's taken lumps from our show. He was the most talkative I've ever seen at post game against Seattle. He really wanted to give the reporters a pretty thorough answer on what he thought was going on. He didn't really have all the words at the moment, but I appreciated his attempt. I think his point streak's fourth longest in the NHL at the moment, and these stats completely contrast what the team's performance is. I mean, since Igor went down, 30 goals against, 6.25 goals against average. Like you said, 5-game losing streak. Quick yanked in 2 of those games. Um, but Mika, the game in Miami, um, you know, the Winter Classic, and his stretch here, he's factored in on like I think it was like 8 of maybe the last like you know, whatever the total was, maybe 15 Ranger goals. I don't have the number on me, but the fact that he's been that much of a factor for this team, he's pretty much been like the only productive and maybe accountable forward in this group. Panarin's put up some numbers, you know he will, but I wanted to give Mika at least the acknowledgement. You know, I just want to give some of those guys that kind of earned it. I mean, Sam Carrick, I thought has been a strong signing. I thought he might not even make the team out of camp when they signed him. Noah Laba, I think, has you know stepped up this season. Gavrikov's proved to be a great signing. Fox and Igor before they went down, I thought they were having resurgent years after some talk that maybe they'd been slowing down or maybe not at the level anymore that they were at to start their career. Steve-O, I know there's a few players you want to shout out to, and I want to get to that before we really play armchair GM and tear this thing down ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, that's gonna be fun, isn't it? Isn't that? But I agree with you. Mika has definitely. I don't want to rename all the stats you just gave, but I think he's quietly having it's a year of two different tells. And Mika, if you showed me those stats in the beginning of the year, I think that we would be either one or two team in the Metro. He's quietly having a good year. Adam Fox, his problem is staying on the ice, not when he's actually on the ice. I think he's been having a fantastic.
He's still third in points.
I know if imagine he had a full healthy season, man, how he would end the year and what those numbers would look like. It's disappointing. JT Miller, I think, is having an okay year. Panarin's Panarin. But my two shout outs, 2.5. I'll throw another guy in there. But, I think Noah Lab is having a great year. He's coming out of nowhere. I think he's been a great supplemental piece. I've said that before. Gabrikov has been great on the defensive end. I think for the defensive problems that we had, echoing the same things you've said. And I think Taylor Radish has been pretty good. A guy that, you didn't really know if this was a guy that was going to be in the lineup every single night. I think what he's given you out of 11 points, I think that is totally, acceptable. When you look at bottom six, you don't look at, the bottom six really isn't expected to produce big offensive numbers. But they are expected to contribute. And with that being said, I think Radish has been fine. I think our bottom six has been a huge problem this year and last year as well. I just think simply it's not good enough. It hasn't been doing the job. You're not looking for big numbers, like I said, but when your top six, like Lafreniere and a couple other guys aren't coming out and producing every single night, you're going to need the bottom six to step up. And quite frankly, we haven't gotten that. And I think that issue in depth has led to a lot of these 1-0 games, no scoring games, because it hasn't been good enough. But those are my shout outs. And of course, you got to throw Igor in there as well.
The screenshot is cut off. So what you mentioned about the bottom six guys is that part of what I think has frustrated fans too is the lack of consistency with that. They've unfortunately had a lot of injuries too, like Edstrom. Rempe was out for a while, but this is cut off at Brodzinski at skater 11, and it goes on because Berard's been up for a few games. Othman's been up for a few games. Perreault's been up for a few games. There's so many players that have also been rostered on this team this year. Now, Steve-O, you mentioned Radish, and this is a little bit of I guess, a feather in your cap. He is the only forward, or I guess the only player on this list that's a plus. He's a +3. Your top six: Panarin -15, Zibanejad -15, Trocheck -16, Miller -17, 15, Cooley -17. All right, let's start there, Steve. I think Will Cooley's disappointed, man. And I know a lot of players have disappointed a lot of fans. So I think your obvious pieces that you could move, and it's going to take some homework, are Panarin, Trocheck, and Soucy. But is there maybe a sleeper trade piece, in your opinion, that maybe could net some assets? Since I think at this point it's pretty much retool, rebuild, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think I would look at trading Schneider. I really would. I think when it comes down to the wire, defense is something you always need in the playoffs. And I think he is such a constant, reliable piece that you could put on the back end. And I think any team, would need come playoffs. So I think he's going to be a sold out piece. I would definitely, if I'm jury, I would definitely listen to offers for him. I think you could get some assets back. When you're talking about a guy like Schneider, you know what you're getting. You're getting somebody that's very reliable defensively, not going to really contribute too much offensively, but again, defensively, constant, reliable, really a plug-in. I think you could plug him into any lineup, and he would be consistently defensively. I think he would really help a playoff team, and I think you could get some assets out of that. So I know that is somebody that you probably weren't expecting me to say, but it's somebody that I'm not really hearing a lot of people say out there. Who?
I like that. I thought that was a pretty good pick. I didn't know what to expect, but I thought that was insightful, Steve.
Yeah,
Kudos to you.
who would you say?
All right, this one is controversial. Um, you just signed Will Cooley at 3.9. I mean, I don't think you cannot listen on Will Cooley. Um, and I mean, that the other obvious player is Alexi Lafreniere. Um, and I'm going to pitch this to you, man. I mean, to me, he's a player that you either solve your problem or you trade your problem. And the Rangers chose to try and solve their problem because they just signed him to that massive contract extension, 7.5 by 7, 6 years remaining on that. He's making 10 mil with bonuses this year, and he draws the ire of this fan base the most out of any player, former number one overall pick. Um, Steve-O, what do you think the Rangers do with him, or what do you want them to do with him?
Man, have we beat the bush on him? You gotta listen to offers. You know, his Lafreniere's trade value has never been lower at this point, and right now, I know we're gonna get cents to the dollar. I said this to you before the epi, but I think you gotta listen to it. Good riddance at this point because I mean, you might have to get rid of him because he's just been so bad. I mean, we said this about a month ago, where we said both you and I mentioned that we're very frustrated with him. He's been very bad. But I mean, it would just be such an organizational loss at this point if the Rangers were to trade, a number one overall in 2020. And he really has failed to live up to or show us anything that he showed us in that 54-point season or 56, 57-point season. He's really failed to show us half of that. At 7 years is a long time, and yeah, his trade value is really, I think, the lowest it's ever been in his entire career right now. But I mean, boy, would trading him be such a hard pill to swallow. But at this point, I'm okay with it because he's been so bad, and not even that, he's not been a game changer. When he,
Oh, Steve-O's mic just
all
went out.
around. No, it's just
There
negative.
you
My
are.
laptop can't fathom how bad he's been. He's not not a game changer at all, and he's just, he just reeks of bad energy, and that's just a great way for me that I think I could sum it up. I mean, how else would you sum it up? I mean, he doesn't have any trade protection, so I think Drury won't have any restrictions if he does decide to trade him. So how do you break that down?
Yeah, well, one, who's taking the contract? Two, if you I think something the Rangers, which actually might be talking to the bigger picture, I'll get there in a moment, but I think they've been embarrassed enough. Is this a point where you just say scorched earth, we'll retain salary to move them? And that looks terrible culture wise, terrible with our economic decisions, etc. I think the Rangers as an organization are going to have to do a lot to build back their creed. But with Lafreniere specifically, I think that you have to factor in his contract because it's like, well, who's going to take that? Um, does that mean retention? Um, and at this point, you mentioned hard pills to swallow. I feel like we're at the end of the line here. Every day we're getting horse pills, so we might as well swallow that one. Um, and this is kind of a conversation that bleeds right into a little bit of the bigger picture on the management side. James Dolan, we talked about his commentary on the fan. That was our main conversation last episode. I had a lot of concerns with that. We're hearing reports that the Rangers are in on Kiefer Sherwood for a first round pick, one of their 2 first round picks in a year that everyone's anticipating that this team should rebuild. Dolan thinks this team is competing. And it's very obvious they're not. My concern, Steve, is that if the Rangers are clearly the fan base and the management are thinking two different things. Dolan wants to make the playoffs. I don't think he has the pulse on the team. He's leaving those hockey decisions to Chris Drury, who he just extended. So Drury has full confidence in ownership. Is Drury forced to make a move? The move doesn't work out. They trade away a major asset in one of their first round picks for a player that doesn't end up doing anything for the team because we know at this point they're not a player away at all. And then Drury either gets fired or there's more drama that comes of this before the draft, before free agency. And now you're really in trouble. Because I think it's obvious that the way this ship needs to be guided is to building back to contention status. And they're far from that. Obviously, in the standings right now, by the math, 46 points last in the East. But I think what we've seen on the ice is at times worse than that. Um, so I think the Lafreniere conversation factors into that because it's like the conversation at the beginning of the year was like, let's bring the heat down. Let's bring the temperature down on all the drama that happened last year. I think my fear is that we're like the fan base has been embarrassed. And I think that's kind of what I've sensed online just from how all the discourse is like fans are mad and angry because it's become embarrassing to associate. Um, so for us walking through this, I don't know what the light is at the end of the tunnel, but it's even the small things like not having a video for Kako and Lindgren. And it's so funny because we just last episode, Steve talked about what could the change of culture mean? Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what Dolan's referring to. If not, then maybe we're just dissecting something completely different about culture. But, you're an original six team. It's your 100th centennial season, and it's gone awfully. And yet again, you've become kind of the lightning rod in the media for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that, I think we got to the point where I think Jury has just totally messed up this culture, and we're seeing the product of that this year. And Dolan, gave us that little reminder that Jury's the guy. He's the one that's going to be rebuilding this. I think Mike Sullivan definitely helps that for sure. But I just don't know. The product that we've gone this last, even going back to last year, I think last year was just a total breaking point, and I think you kind of see just the sour remains of that whole every debacle and all that drama. You kind of see a little bit of that sprinkled in this year, and it stinks. And the thing for me is it's the same shit as Ranger fans. You want to trade assets, you get picks. All right, well, this franchise can't develop players. This is not the NFL where players come in and make an immediate impact. You have to develop players, and our franchise cannot. And again, this isn't something new, but it's something that I want to bring up as people say, oh, trade Panarin, get as many assets as you can. We get those assets. Okay, we trade Panarin, we get those assets. I don't trust this organization to develop those assets in the first place. So that's part of my reason to why, I'm still sticking my course with Panarin. I don't want to jump around too much, but I think we should definitely not trade Panarin. That's where I still stand on this. We could get into that in a second. But, when it comes to Lafreniere, I think I'm okay with cents to the dollar. Schneider, another player that I think that we could see go is Susie. I think he's a player that is going to be a unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. He is somebody that long term I don't see him being on this team. This is a player that we basically got nothing for San Jose. What did we give up, a third or fourth round for him?
From Vancouver.
Or Vancouver, yeah. He is.
But I think it was like a third rounder.
Yeah, something like that. But he is. I think he's very valuable in the sense that he's not much of a puck mover, but he is very good defensively, and I think he's a player that a playoff team could easily slot in as a third pair role on a defenseman. Any contender could come in and grab him. So he's somebody that I would look to move as well. You could probably get a third rounder for him. You might have to settle for even a little less, but he's somebody that I'd be 100% okay with getting rid of. I was never big on him. Me. He looks a little slow. I gotta had a nickname for him. I won't say it on the podcast, but he just looks slow outside on the ice. So yeah, that's my thought on that. Is there anybody else that we're missing that you would? There's one name in particular that I'm hearing a lot. I'm interested to see if you say him. We've not
You
said
know
out
what point I'm at, Steve-O? You know what point I'm at?
everybody.
Unfortunately, I think everybody's on the table. Vincent Trocheck's that name. He's a
There you
center.
go. There you
He's still
go.
young enough. He's got playoff pedigree. He's a grinder. He had a great playoff run in 24. That's a great, you know, sentence on his resume, a great addition to his resume. He can shoot. He can win faceoffs. He finished top 3 in 24 in faceoffs in the NHL, faceoff win percentage. He can score goals. He he plays with heart. Mike Sullivan just talked about that 2 pressers ago. Again, after the Buffalo game, after it took some ill-advised penalties, Mike Sullivan and Vincent Trocheck both acknowledged that he's at his best when he's in the weeds and in the game. But Vincent Trocheck is a top asset you can trade because he's a center. He's got the grit. He's got that package. And that's extremely enticing in an NHL where there's no centers. Now, the problem with that is, that requires the Rangers to address the center position, which they haven't had depth at center, maybe ever. When we're talking about our fandom, the time we've been watching the team, even when I was covering the team, that was probably the most 2023. They had Zibanejad, Trocheck, and Hedel. And that ended 10 games into the season because Hedel is an injury-prone player, unfortunately. But when I was covering the team, that was the buzz around the practice facility was they got 3 centers now. This is a team where Trocheck and Hedel are interchangeable second-line centers. If you move Trocheck, Steve-O, the concern is I understand you're rebuilding, but you still need at least a placeholder for your second-line center position. They're going up against a Vincent Trocheck every night for an 82-game season. You don't want to be that bad.
Yeah,
That's my opinion.
I agree.
If there's a time to be bad, it's the Olympic break's coming up. We still got a lot of hockey left. If you're going to be bad now. Don't be at your worst to start next season, in my opinion. Now, obviously, I think if you're going to start to rebuild, it's still not going to be good at all. I don't think right now the way things project next fall is great either, but at least maybe in the summer, you'd have to still replace that position because you're playing top 1 or 2 line centers every night if you're the second line center. I just wouldn't want to put Noah Laba into that position.
I agree with you 100%. My view at it is when looking, I know you said everybody on the block, and I agree with that. But you typically don't want to trade players that you think that the next time, whenever that is, God knows when that'll be, when the Rangers are there in a situation, who's going to help us out and help us win? And obviously we know our untouchables are going to be Igor. Adam Fox for me is a big untouchable.
I agree.
And
Not everyone agrees with that, though, but I agree with that.
Yeah, but those people don't know what they're talking about. And Gabrikov. Gabrikov is a big untouchable. I think he's been very solid. He's been one of the most positive assets that were added to this team, or probably the most positive asset that was added to this team this year. So for me, those 3 players, Igor Fox and Gabrikov, are absolutely untouchable because let's say in 2 years from now, those 3 players will still be in, mainly in their primes, and they'll have the opportunity to help us out to win. With that being said, I think the elephant in the room, and that's Panarin. I'm still not changing my opinion on this, and I know
he's digging in.
95% of Ranger fans right now would disagree with me, especially after watching the product that's been on the ice. But I'm still not trading Panarin. I think when it comes to it, and we know what kind of player I love. Panarin, he's one of my favorite players. But when you look at it,
are we talking about the player or the asset?
We're talking about the asset.
Okay.
Even Panarin is still going to be a very difficult. It's not as easy. It's very easy to say it and actually execute it. And there's a couple factors here that make Panarin trade very difficult. Number one, we all know he has the no clause movement, so he could veto any trade.
Steve-O, just to chime in, man, don't you think that at this point, though, maybe he wants out to chase a cup?
I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what he's thinking. Um,
I just want to put that on the table.
he might, but he's the one that has control of the situation. Panarin does, not us.
Oh yeah,
We don't have control of the situation. You know,
he has a lot of control.
we really don't have any leverage in this situation. You know,
Yeah.
our only leverage is that we stink. The more we lose, the more likely he's going to get traded. So that's only the leverage that we have. You know, so if I think there is probably only Panarin, he's a very stubborn guy. There's probably only 2 or 3 teams in the league that I think he would consider waiving his no clause movement for. What who those teams are, we have no clue. But I also think his cap hit is another big issue. What is his 11, 12 some million? His cap hit is going to
Yeah.
be another big issue. I think a lot of contenders don't want to fit that on his books. And I think even if we are to retain some salary in a deal, I think it's still going to make it harder. You know, even a lot of these contenders, they're tight on cap too. You know, and how many you look at how many teams that Panarin would want to go to, and that team's got to have cap space. It's not a lot of teams. You know, it's a slim list. You know, hypothetically, you know, the Rangers suck and we're going to trade Panarin. Yeah, that sounds good. But you know, who's actually going to take him for that cap hit that he would want to go to? I'm willing to bet those teams are less than I could count on in terms of my fingers. So that situation is just hard, and that also not given that's not given us. You know, I think we gotta resign him. I don't think Jury's going to or this organization is going to want to dish him out a long term contract. But I mean, what he means to
No.
this organization offensively. And again, it all depends on, is this a retool or a completely rebuild? You know, when you talk about rebuilding, you're talking about scrapping down everything and starting, you know, and rebuilding from the ground up. And I don't think just the whole tone of this organization, bringing in Mike Sullivan, bringing in JT Miller, you know, sticking with Mika. I don't get that tone from this organization that we are going to rebuild, you know, especially when you have, you know, solid pieces with an Adam Fox and Igor Shesterkin. I don't get that sense from this organization. I could be completely wrong after this year. You know, we could see a major rehaul. I just don't get that sense. And if you're not going to go that way, you might as well retain Panarin. I mean, on a nightly basis, he is at the end of every Ranger year. You know, he is leading in almost every single offensive category, you know, in terms of points and goals and assists. I mean, you know, are we ready as a New York Rangers fan base to watch the next 3-4 years of bad hockey? I'm going to call it bad hockey because there's going to be such it's bad hockey now with Panarin. I mean, take Panarin out, you know, he's going to leave such a hole on this team. I mean, it's going to be you don't miss things until they're gone. And once Panarin's off this team, I'm telling every Ranger fan, you will miss him because what he means to this team is so invaluable. And I don't know if I want to go the next 3-4 years of my lifetime, you know, reeking offensively. I mean, we're bad with him. I mean, imagine without him. So I know I said a lot there. Do you want to trade?
I disagree with one thing you said. You
Okay,
mentioned
reach it
that
out. Lay it out.
I actually think you said exactly what's going on. The Rangers are not, they're digging in. And you have Mika Zibanejad. They made the JT Miller trade. They get Mike Sullivan, pay him the big bucks because he's been on he's been on their list of head coaches that they wanted and desired for years, coveted the man. And they believe that the connection with Drury and Sullivan might be better than what we saw with Gallant's relationship with Drury and then Laviolette towards the end of last season. Where I think you're on the mark by stating that that's the direction they want to go is in a full rebuild. What I disagree with though is that I don't think that you should not rebuild just because you hired Mike Sullivan last season as the head coach. It's clear at this point that the team that we thought it was going to be in the summer is not, and the organization thought it was going to be in the summer is not the team we're seeing now. What's the goal? What's the mission? You know, I don't see Mike Sullivan as a head coach that is a let's rebuild with him head coach.
100%.
Right. And I think they are going to force that because they want a culture change and they want this parachute dump in. Let's get the most hits. Let's play physical, in your face, hard forecheck. play tight defense in front of our franchise league best goaltender. I just don't think that Vincent Trocheck is at the age that by the time the Rangers turn this around, you're going to want him as your 2C anyway. Unfortunately, he'll then be 34, 35. Panarin, the same thing to me. Panarin is probably the most I'm on the fence about. The only thing that I will add to your conversation about keeping him is, well, it's going to be a really delicate situation the next few weeks. The advantage for the Rangers is the Olympic break. There's no Team Russia. You can make a trade then. I don't believe there's an NHL roster freeze in the Olympic time frame, especially for a player that's not suiting up for the Olympics. He's not going to be over there. He's got 3 weeks off. The other thing, though, is that I wouldn't want to see him walk for nothing. If he leaves in free agency, you pretty much miss on at least getting some assets for him in return. And that, I think, would set a really bad tone going into next season. Besides the conversations of who wants to come here, I didn't realize they were playing Ottawa last night. After the Seattle game, if we were going to record, I was going to mention, hell, is this the time you make the big ball swing and go for Brady Tkachuk the way that Quinn Hughes dealt to Minnesota? Very different circumstance. Ottawa needs a change of scenery, clearly. They haven't been good. They made the playoffs for the first time with this group last year, for the first time in 5 years, 6 years of building this team. One playoff appearance, lost to their rival, haven't been good this year. Probably won't make the playoffs this year unless something drastically changes. Is this the time you trade for an asset like Brady Tkachuk? With the way things look last night, I don't even know if it's an attractive place. Panarin signed with the Rangers because they had the money. He wanted New York. There was the allure of New York coming off of years where they competed and were a top of the, an organization at the top, revered, looked at as a club that handles business well. And number 3, Steve, is that they had the number 2 overall pick. Panarin was like, I'd love to play with that guy. Then the next year they get the 1st overall pick. Vincent Trocheck came into the fold, addressing what you said about Trocheck. He came into the fold as, and by the way, chime in whenever you want. I'd love if you disagree with me on these topics. Vincent Trocheck came in to me as like, we're either going to keep Ryan Strome, Andrew Kopp, probably not, or Vincent Trocheck, who's a player we've coveted for a little while. He's going to be a 2C on a Stanley Cup contender. This team's not a Stanley Cup contender. And as much as I think he's a heart and soul guy, I just don't like going back to the thesis. How does Trocheck fit into a rebuild? To me, I just don't think he does. And I don't know if he wants to either.
I agree with you on Trocheck. I think Trocheck should be shopped, and we definitely should take offers for him. Said a lot there.
Yeah.
You made
I threw the book.
Counter arguments. I want to know from you right now, for jury, yes or no, would you trade Panarin?
Yes.
Interesting.
No hezzy. No hezzy.
I like that. No, I like that. No hesitation.
You know why? The Olympic break gives you such an opportunity to make a trade and like really work with the player and say, all right, you know what, Artemi? We're far apart here on the extension. Let's make this work. Let's make this work. You know why? Because you make it work. It looks good for your relations with players in these situations, which we know they took a hit on that with Barclay Goodrow, Jacob Trouba, Capo Caco, Hedel. The second thing is that you can't lose them for nothing. I just don't think I don't think you can afford, with how embarrassing this season has been, to let a player of his level just walk. And you have to learn from the Mitch Marner situation in Toronto. You knew this year was coming for 2 years. The last year the team sucked. You could have started figuring this out last year, and you kept tabling it. Like, it's crunch time now. It's now or never in my eyes. Steve-O, what about you? I mean, obviously, I know that you think you would rather sign him, but do you think they will?
I don't know. I do
don't
not know. I would say no, don't trade him, but I agree with you in the sense where if you don't trade him, you have to sign him. You have to give him that money that he wants. I don't know if this organization wants to do that. I would want to go. I'm okay with giving him more money for lesser years. I think for me, the years is more of a problem. But you and your answer, no hesitation wanting to trade him. I think a comparable return, in recent memory that I could think of that I would want for Panarin is one that the Flyers got for Claude Giroux. I think Giroux is kind of similar situation where Giroux had a full no movement clause, and he went to the Panthers at a deadline, and the Panthers gave up a first round pick, a third round pick, Owen Tippett, and maybe a couple of other players as well. But that's kind of realistically a return that I would want for Panarin. You look at last deadline, Marchand, he also had that no trade movement. What Boston get, a second round pick? I don't want that for Panarin. I think Panarin's worth more than what the Bruins got in return for Marchand. But at the same time, I do agree with you where if we go into next year and you don't trade Panarin, you don't get any assets, and you don't re-sign him, I mean, that just reeks of we don't know what the fuck we're doing. Who said that? And that's the truth. And I think you can't be in that situation next year. So I do agree with that, and that's why I'm so torn, and why my answer is so much tougher than just trade him. But it's a tough situation. Obviously you want to keep him and you want to retain him, and I think 3-4 years, would be the sweet spot for Panarin of how much I would want.
He already declined that though.
I know, I know, which is why it's going to be tough, and it's going to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
Do you trust Drury to manage this?
No, I do not. You know what? Chris Drury is a general manager that when he came in, they believed that it was to bring this team, change the culture. That was 5 years ago. Get the most out of the youth. But it became apparent that this team was no longer rebuilding. They were ready to take another step, playoffs. Then they make an unprecedented conference final run in 21-22. Well-earned conference final run. And that elevated them to a contender status very quickly. I thought, our listeners are probably going to hate us for half the shit we've said this episode, but don't care. Chris Drury made some great deals. Frank Vetrano, Andrew Kopp, Justin Braun, Tyler Mott, the backup goaltenders, Jonathan Quick, mix him in there. Alex Wenberg, Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko. He did everything to get this group and this team to win a championship. He made some masterful moves in that respect. The Goodrow signing was good, maybe an overcorrection with Reeves. As we saw kind of last year with the defense overhaul for this season, like there are times where he overcorrects the situation. And that's why I don't know if he's fit for this role. I don't think he is, because I think he was a general manager that was operating well when he needed to add a piece or two and get them to a championship level. I don't think this is a general manager that is fit for a rebuild. Steve-O, do you think Chris Drury is fit for a rebuild?
100% agree with everything you just said. And I think, listen, a lot of people might disagree with this. That's fine. You don't have to listen. But I 100% agree with you, because the move Drury's made, like, amazing moves.
Splashes.
He made some splashes, but I agree with the sense that the team was in a different position, and those are more additions and plugins, and those plugs worked, and there was spark, and there was chemistry. Now you're in different territory. This story is 10 times harder. I think that this is something that Drury is newly accustomed to. I think
Steve-O, your audio is a little off, my man. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's off, man. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, like
maybe it's Wi-Fi.
Is off.
Oh, now it's good. I didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead, my man.
I was cooking there. Damn it. But I do agree with you in the sense that Drury, he's made some splashes. Chemistry was there, those moves. But we're in a different territory now. and this territory and what is required of this team in that retool rebuild category is different when you're a contender, and you plug in pieces. And I'm with you. I do not trust Jury on this, and you look at the last year and how he handled everything. I agree with some of the moves that he's made, but it's still, they were done at the wrong time. You could have executed these moves earlier and got more more for some of these players. And just the drama and everything around it, I just don't. I'm with you. I don't trust Jury on this. This is quite frankly, this is new territory for him. He has not had to act this way in this organization, in, in quite some time. And I think that we're pivoting to that road point where there's going to be a lot of, we're trying to do stuff on the fly that's not going to work, and it hasn't worked in the last year, and I don't think it will continue to work if we take this direction. But I'm with you. I agree with you. Chris Drury, I don't have any faith, especially with this Panarin thing. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't know if he gets moved. A lot of players, if I had to take a guess, I would say yes. I do think Panarin will get moved. Would I move him? No. But again, if you're not going to move him, I would be fully confident that you're going to work and get a deal done. And I'm not sure that, I'm not confident that a deal will get done. I haven't seen the pieces from Jury, out there. So yeah, I would say that's my stance on that. Lay that to rest on this, Epi. I mean, a lot of these things, man. I've just come to the conclusion that culture and all these issues, the only way to change it is to just completely rebuild it from the ground up. And it's the sad reality, but I think we're slowly headed in that direction with this team, because I don't see it improving any other way. It's sad to sit there and watch JT Miller every single night on the post game give these real answers, and it's just the only way to talking about that Seattle game, you're scoring 2 goals right at the bat. The New York Rangers team from 3 years ago would have held on to that. Not only would have they held on to that, they would have added on top of it, and the score would have been 6-2, and that's just, we don't see that anymore. Bad teams give up goals late in the games. Bad teams can't win on home ice. Bad teams, end the first period with 4 shots on goal, and everything we've seen is us in a nutshell this year, and it stinks. But I'm with you. I don't trust Jury, man, and this might be the only time in my lifetime where I'm confused of the direction of where we go with this team. And part of that is the expectation. Part of it is the media. Part of it is the expectation. You have James Dolan a week ago on the
leadership.
Fans.
It's leadership. It comes top down.
Coming out publicly and saying, this is a team, we're still here to compete. We're not going anywhere. We're not rebuilding. Jury's the guy. Don't give up on us yet. And then you watch games, and the last 5 games, we've looked terrible. It's hard not to give up on this team. So it's just so conflicting what this franchise leadership is sending us. It makes me confused, and when we really shouldn't be. So that's kind of my take on it. I don't know if you have anything else to add on that note.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think on the subject of general manager, again, I think what's uneasy about what I look at as uneasy logically about these conversations is what comes after this wave of anger and acceptance and moving forward, and maybe not paying as much attention to the team because of what we're seeing. There's not much of an investment there. As we mentioned, whether it's you want to buy tickets or you want to watch on your couch, not much of an investment. Confusion from leadership. It's what comes after this. It's this team. We talked about culture. We talked about, and that in a lot of different ways, culture. We talked about general manager. We talked about the head coach, if it's going to be a rebuild. We talked about your star offensive player and what you do with him. Don't walk for nothing. We talked about your former number 1 overall pick being in a disastrous situation this year. We've talked about assets that you can trade. I mean, this is now counting on my fingers like a child. We're on 6 major things that if any organization had to deal with one of them, you would probably not consider them a contender. The
100%.
Rangers have 6 major uh roles to address, situations to address, changes to make. And we're questioning the people that are responsible for that. And I think that's where you look at the view between villages here, and it's looking like the Grand Canyon right now. And I think that's like I'm not really focused as much right now on the fall off. I'm already looking ahead at what does this look like? Because guess what? Even you land top 3 in this NHL draft, it's a deep draft with a lot of quality, but not a lot of that quality is Connor McDavid level. I mean, who is? But point being, I don't know if this and again, maybe we're talking futures here. We'll never know. But when we're talking about the draft, it's not like there's players that you say like, oh, I'd really love this guy. Still very early to tell, but yeah, it doesn't appear like free agency has a lot of answers. It doesn't feel like, the conversation, maybe you and I are ahead of the curve. Who becomes the general manager of this organization?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So, like, I think, head coach, you finally got Sullivan when you were hoping this team could at least compete and get the last out of the Panarin era. Now what? Like head coach, where do you turn? You've tried Boston College David Quinn. That didn't really work because you advanced the rebuild. You brought in Gallant, contender status. His relationships kind of dwindled in the organization. Then you went Laviolette. He brought them to probably the highest success they were at or could be at, and then the lowest they could be at, which was we're expecting a Stanley Cup, we're missing the playoffs, and we're an embarrassment. So, like, I feel like that's kind of the part you and I are going to be talking about the rest of the year is not as much about the fire. It's when we extinguish it, how do we replace the furniture?
Man, you are money with these analogies. Even in times of hardship, you could always trust you to dish them out. I love that. You said in that last little minute there, you had 2 analogies. I love that. You're always money with that. Yeah, and even when it comes with this team, and nothing's certain. We don't know what's going to come, and maybe we're ahead of the curve. And we could look back at January 15th in a year from now and say, you know what? We were the first ones to say who replaces Drury, because again, this is a big problem. And I don't see Sullivan a guy that you are going to bring in and pay all that money to, and he's going to sit here for the next 4 years and completely rebuild. Again, he's not that kind of coach. We know him. And again, Drury's not that type of GM. So that's why when I think originally when it was pitched to Sullivan, it was more of, a quick retool. But again, there really wasn't that much retooling. It was more of just, how about we bring in Sullivan to change the culture? And again, Dolan said it, culture takes a long time to rebuild. And again, like I said, the only way for me that you completely the only way you reach what leadership is telling us is to completely rebuild. You don't retool and change culture. It doesn't happen, at least in the timeline that leadership wants it to. So again, that's why I'm cautious. And I think we'll know the route that, even just trading Panarin, we'll know the direction of what this organization wants to go down. Again, Dolan said he doesn't want to go into a rebuild. So again, I don't know. It's so conflicting, but only time will tell here. And if the Rangers win, the Rangers suck, it doesn't matter. You'll still have Puck Talk here giving you the insight on all of this. So we'll see what happens. As always, follow us along on all of our socials at Puck Talk CS. Panarin traded or not or resigned, Trocheck, anybody, we'll have it covered here at Puck Talk CS. And always remember, it's just the luck of the puck.